floor is yours, Willem Jan.
Thank you very much, Corina. So let's share my screen. So following up Sjoerd, it's so interesting. Sjoerd and I, we started Serious Scrum 4 years ago, I believe, and we are so totally different. The way Sjoerd is approaching Scrum and I am approaching Scrum, but we meet in the middle. We both are fully committed to a belief that Scrum is so much misunderstood and has so much potential for so many people. Having said that, I will now do a talk that is doing a lot of things that Sjoerd says that you rather should not do. I will talk a lot. I will bring forward a lot of topics. Still, having said that, it's only 25 minutes, I believe, that I have. It's only a part of the talk that I normally do on this topic. And it will be about Fluid Scrum Teams. So, my journey with the Fluid Scrum Team started several years ago. I've worked with many great teams over the years, and my current team might be the best. You might understand that I have to say this with Corine and Gunnar, who are in my team present. But the first team of my current company is a close second. They were seen as a special team by the company, special between brackets, because they were the remnants of an earlier Scrum implementation. But when new owners came, they forced the team to move back all other teams to specialized teams. So we moved from Scrum back to teams with business analysts, designers, coders, and testers. So we were brought back to the good old days of silos, leading to misalignment and delays. There was one team that escaped all of this, the back office team. They were allowed to continue to work in Scrum. I think those were the perks of being considered necessary, but also uninteresting and unsexy. So the team that managed the back office of our product consisted of 70 people, and the product that we offer as a company, Worldline, is an online payment platform. The back office is a part that the users often don't see, but there are many functionalities at the back office. So at the back of the slick and smooth UX, and the back office is very complex. And the team had to gradually and unintentionally moved away from Scrum by the book. But somehow it worked for them. At least they were far more effective than the silo teams working on the other parts of the product. So there were 17, at a certain point even 25, and together we knew everything there was to know about all the processes. A great functioning machine, and it didn't matter what objective we had, we were always able to find a way to organize ourselves into smaller units and do it. So a team of 25, but when we had several goals to achieve, we were able to split ourselves into multiple groups, smaller groups, and then work on those topics. Then the company switched owners again, and you can already guess it. Soon after, Scrum was reintroduced. And this time, they did it properly, and we are still having the positive effects of that transformation. But of course, not everything was perfect. It's impossible to achieve perfection anyway. So we also are not in that situation. But yeah, we inspected and adapted, and we are still having a lot of positive effects right now, although we still have to improve. But for the back office team, the only team that was already was a Scrum team, the transformation also had negative impact, because we heard we did it all wrong. Our team was too big to be a Scrum team, so we needed to split up in 3. And that sounds logical, because if the teams are too big, it's very difficult to collaborate. So we agreed, of course, but we lost many benefits. As a team, we lost the overview of what we did. We also lost the cohesion that we had before, and also the shared ownership. The one strength of the back office team was lost. And all of this happened because they needed to use Scrum by the book. Doing Scrum well was a top priority. I wasn't part of their struggles anymore because around that time, around the transition, I switched to another team to become Scrum Master there. That's also an interesting story, and I would like to tell you that, but I don't have the time. So today, I will skip that one. And then 3 years have passed since the moment that we had that switch. I have a new role now, and with 4 of my colleagues, I'm agile coach of the merchant services division in Worldline. And one day, people from our former team at the back office came back to me. They still struggled with being so splintered. So 3 years after the transformation, they still struggled with being these separate teams. The loss of overview, the reduced sense of ownership, and the lack of cohesion. It was still hurting them. So what did I say? Why not simply return to what you did before? It worked so well. Just go back to working as one team. Because it's not about doing Scrum perfectly. It's about getting the best results possible. And for them, this is working in one big team. So I suggested for them to work in Fluid Scrum Teams. I think now it's the time that I'm talking a bit more about the Fluid Scrum Teams. And yeah, it is. It sparked. The idea sparked in my head because of Fast Agile. Fast Agile is a different way of looking at complex problems and solve them with a bigger group, and then splitting into smaller groups every several days. And I thought, well, that concept, you can use it for Scrum as well. So I took Scrum as it is, with its events, the sprint planning, the daily Scrum, the sprint review, and the sprint retrospective. And also with the accountabilities. So the product owner maximizing the value of the product, developers creating the product, and the Scrum Master to ensure the effectiveness of the teams. Using Scrum, of course. And I kept all the other rules of Scrum. The only thing I did not keep was the size. Wait a minute, I have to go back to my previous slide. Sorry. So I moved away from the idea that small and stable teams are always the best thing to have. But that's not even in the Scrum Guide. It's something that evolved due to best practices and scientific studies, but perhaps also due to a rigid mindset. So Fluid Scrum Teams organize themselves based on the work at hand. It's this part of Fast Agile that I embraced. So suppose your pool of people is 20, and you have 20 people in your team, and these people organize themselves into 2 to 7 Fluid Scrum Teams to address specific topics. And every time a new topic needs to be addressed, the people of the Fluid teams organize themselves to optimize the chances of success of these challenges. So the team of 20 is stable and cohesive, and they form smaller teams each sprint to maximize the effectiveness. So how does this work in practice? Well, here's an example. At the sprint planning, all the developers that work on the product, the entire pool of people is present, and the product owner proposes a number of objectives for the upcoming sprint. What follows is a discussion to agree upon these objectives, and then the pool of people self-organizes around the objectives, and they decide how to split into multiple Fluid Scrum teams that will work on their objectives during one sprint. The Fluid Scrum teams have their own daily scrums, and they discuss their progress towards their sprint goal. And at the end of the sprint, there's one sprint review reflecting on the outcome of the work of all the teams. As they all work towards creating that one product, working towards that one product goal, they share the sprint review where they discuss learnings with the stakeholders. Every sprint, different teams will be formed to address the objectives. So this concept of Fluid Scrum Teams has some great benefits. For instance, Scrum stresses the importance of cross-functional teams to address complexity. But how do you know you have all the right people to address all the complex problems now and in the future with stable, small teams? As we saw at the start, with my back office team, when they split, you may not have all the skills required to address all possible problems you may face. But with Fluid Scrum Teams, you will be able to resolve this. With a larger pool of people, you always have the possibility to have more skills. 20 people are bound to have more combined skills than 6. This allows for more options to find the best way forward. Another benefit is that it resolves a typical constraint of stable teams. Picture this, you have a team that has the same composition all the time. It wishes to work on topics that will allow every team member to be useful. Everyone wants to be useful, of course. But what if the skills of a certain person in the team aren't needed to meet the objective of a team for a certain sprint? Well, that team then has no option than to find something for this person that's either separated from the major objective of the team or not using the strength of the person. With Fluid Teams, this person that would hardly be useful for a stable team, of a small stable team, could be focusing on another topic with a different group of people. Fluid Scrum Teams increase the chances of effective contributions of the people. And there's also the self-management part. Fluid Scrum Teams are fully in line with the concept of self-management. Every sprint, the developers of the larger pool of people organize themselves around the objectives. They determine who does what, and Fluid Scrum Teams have more control over what they are working on than stable teams. Because with stable teams, what you will often see, stable small teams, is that the product owner would already determine the objectives of every team before the sprint planning. With Fluid Scrum Teams, the product owner allows everyone to decide which objective they wish to tackle. This helps to increase the sense of ownership for the entire product. And that's what you want to achieve, that the whole team is together working towards the objectives to create value for the product. And as a result, it helps to fulfill the accountability to maximize the value of that entire product. Well, this was a lot of theory, so let me now share an example. I call this example the challenge of the product journey, the challenging product journey. So let's picture an online payment company. This is a company that ensures seamless payments of online purchases. You can think of payments for Amazon, AliExpress, online gaming purchases, for instance, with your FIFA game, things like that. All kinds of online purchases you can imagine. The company has the objective to enhance its customers' experience by introducing an online reporting tool. The challenges of this online reporting tool are that it will display everything that happens with the payments in real time. Whether the payment is done, if there's fraud detection taking place, whether it was rejected, all kinds of information. And as we are talking about millions of payments a day, this is quite a challenge. You can't afford to have any errors or delay in what you display. The confusion and potentially even panic of the merchants can be catastrophic for your good name if you mess up. So this is really an important and very complex product that they want to create. So the product has the potential to disrupt the market, but it also has many unknowns that may put the endeavor at risk. And the most important Unknowns are the following at the start of the journey. First of all, can this online product actually handle the required capacity? The payment flow is huge, especially the real-time replication of the data could be challenging. And another one, how difficult is it to create this product end-to-end? The company doesn't have any experience with this type of product, so they need to reduce the risk of unknown challenges quickly. And lastly, but most importantly, what is the actual need for the customer? Is our product indeed as valuable as we expect? The company needs to verify if the product has potential and also what functionalities will be most appreciated. Of course, there are far more unknowns, but these three need to be addressed as soon as possible, preferably within a month. And based upon the learnings, the team can then focus on the other challenges. So as you can see, typically a complex environment where you want to face the challenges head on and try to reduce the risks that you have as soon as possible. You already have seen fancier graphics than mine. I'm not really an expert on graphics, but hopefully this picture is clear enough. So let's look at the team composition. The product will have a software and a hardware component, or more components, and a group of 17 people in total is responsible for creating this product. The pool of people has all the of course, people have all multiple skills, but they are primarily specialized as follows. We have 3 front-end developers, 3 back-end developers, a UX expert, 4 testers, 2 DBA experts, 2 data lake experts, and also 2 infra specialists. Of course, you don't have to memorize this. This is only to paint the picture. As long as you see the broad strokes, that's great. So here you have a depiction of the complete pool of people. The expectation is that this pool of people has all the skills required to create a product. And the intention is to keep this group together for a longer time to maximize stability. So when we enter sprint 1, we see that the product owner has suggested 2 different goals. One goal is to check if the replication process is indeed working as expected. And the other one is to test if the proof of concept, the end-to-end really works in the proof of concept. This is discussed at the sprint planning, and there the team of 17 self-organizes to find how they best can achieve both sprint objectives. And at the end of this self-organization session, you see that we have 2 teams, a group of 8 working on the replication process, and a group of 9 looking at the end-to-end proof of concept. Both teams will self-organize during the sprint, and they will be focusing on their respective sprint goals autonomously. And at the sprint review, we also see that they discovered something. And the first Scrum team, Fluid Scrum team, managed to show that a functioning replication process is indeed possible. They proved it worked, but they also bumped upon 2 parts of the replication that needs to be altered to make it more stable. So that's something that requires immediate attention, something they learned from the sprint. The other Fluid team was also successful. They showed that the proof of concept works, but they also had a small issue with grabbing data from the data lake. So that's also an immediate concern that has to be taken away as soon as possible. So this pool of people, 17, the product owner and the stakeholders agree that they will not only tackle those issues that they uncovered, but they will also build the first version of the product. And that first version will also include potentially fraudulent payment attempts. So that's the first function that they will create. So this means that for the next sprint, there will be 3 objectives. Of course, after the sprint review, there's a retrospective, and yeah, you could imagine that this would be working similar to the LESS framework. First, the Fluid Scrum teams would have a separate retrospective, and afterwards, the entire pool of people, the 17, will have a combined retrospective. There are many techniques to have an effective discussion with a larger group of people, and personally, I would recommend liberating structures. With that, the first sprint is finished, and of course, such is the nature of Scrum, sprint 2 starts immediately afterwards. And at the start of that sprint, the 2 Fluid Scrum teams cease to exist. We are back to the pool of 17 people, and they start as one unit. At the sprint planning of the third sprint, the product owner has indeed suggested to come up with 3 goals to achieve. One is to fix the replication. The second one is to fix the proof of concept. And the third one is diving into a first iteration of the functionality, first increment of the functionality. Again, the group of 17 self-organizes to find the best ways to achieve their goals. And at the end of the sprint planning, you see they have one bigger Fluid Scrum team. They are going to focus on the functionality, and 2 smaller teams to fix the technical issues that were identified. Well, so this continues. So every time at the start of a sprint, the 17 will define the goals, then self-organize around the goals to form temporary Fluid Scrum teams. They will work on it autonomously, and at the sprint review, they will present their combined findings, and at the retrospective, they will have a discussion on how it worked, and at the planning, everything starts anew. That brings me to the last part of my talk, and this is about the levels of fluidity, because I discussed Fluid Scrum teams and stable Scrum teams as 2 opposites, but you can have several variations. The first one is complete fluidity. This means that every sprint, the teams that are formed can be totally different depending on the problems at hand. And this is a solution for environments that are especially complex, and every new problem is distinctly different from previous problems. You can also have partial fluidity, where you have a part of the pool of people that is working in a stable team, because the nature of the work that they do is mostly quite similar. And another part is more fluid and organizes it again and again. Then you have specific or targeted fluidity, where you basically have a couple of stable teams, but you also have people that will constantly decide where they best would fit. Those would be people that typically can't work with a single team full time. You could think about architects, database administrators, salespeople, whatever. People that can't be beneficial for the team full time. And then we have, of course, no fluidity. And yeah, this obviously means that you will have fully stable teams. Teams will not change for a longer period. And every sprint, teams have the same composition. So I guess with that, we are at the Q&A, or at least at the end of my story.